What's up, brother? It's your boy, Mike Muse, welcome to the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation. This is a long-awaited conversation that I've been so excited to have. I have seen this brother grow and mature and soar right before my eyes, right next to me. I couldn't be more proud of him. You guys have all heard my story over and over and over and over here. How I got my start in music, and how I got my start in music, as you know, co-founder of Muse Recordings. And I am finally joined by my co-founder, Marcus Collins, who I talk so lovingly about. Marcus Collins is from Detroit, Michigan, has always had this incredible curiosity of culture, of music. No one can talk about music the way that Marcus Collins can. I met him at the University of Michigan. Actually, there's a story beforehand. We both met each other before we were both interested in the University of Michigan at a summer program called Boys State. And then from there at the University of Michigan, where he majored in engineering, then we went down to co-found Muse Recordings together. And since then, Marcus has soared. He has went back to the University of Michigan to get his MBA at the School of Ross, the Ross School of Business. And then he went to Temple University, where he is now Dr. Collins. So going forward, I'm going to call this brother Dr. Collins. And he is now the Chief Strategy Officer at White & Kennedy. Yeah, you know the vibes with that one. And he's also, too, a clinical professor at the University of Michigan, Law School of Business. And before you even hit me up, no, he cannot get your kid into the University of Michigan. So don't even DM me, don't tweet me, do not ask me about that. Without further ado, my brother, Dr. Marcus Collins. What's happening, my guy?
How you doing, Mike? It's so good to see you, my brother, man. This is awesome.
Yo, I'm super excited for this conversation, man. I'm just so proud of you. And congratulations on literally everything. We started the conversation off, and I said, what's happening? You said everything. Talk to me about what that feeling is right now that you're feeling.
You know, it's hard for me to capture it because it's in one part, it's something you work hard to try to achieve. And then when you realize it, you feel so humbled that it's actually happened. And no, you know me better than most people do. No way I've ever thought that I'd be here right now in this moment doing what I'm doing and be able to achieve what I've achieved. So I feel like equal parts excited, equal parts elated, while also feeling extremely humbled and very, 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 very grateful for all the things, everything all at once.
Are you the definition of you can have everything all at once?
You know what? I don't know, because there are consequences to everything. There are trade-offs, so there's some things that,
Tell me.
Part of me feels like, you invest yourself where you can. I mean, we all have, 24 hours in the day. And if you ever pledged a fraternity or sorority, you know that you have to be a good steward of your time. There's a lot of hours that are available to you, but comes with that trade-offs. And there's some places where I'd like to have been much more social and invest more in friendships that I didn't get a chance to because I prioritized my family and work and these other things that you aspire to over them. Over the time you allocate. Not that there's any love that is lost, but just where you put your time and your energy. So there are trade-offs, there are trade-offs along the way. And you hope and pray that those trade-offs were worth it in the end.
What's interesting though, most people who are as ambitious, and I consider you to be someone who is highly ambitious, and the proof is in the product, right? And to all the things that you've done, right? No one gets the MBA from Michigan. No one goes to Temple to get their doctorate degree. No one gets to White & Kennedy without having some sort of ambition. But interesting enough for you, you talked about your family in that space, right? And so mostly when people who are overly ambitious or highly ambitious, family is never the primary part of the conversation. I think it's interesting that you brought your family forward first and not work.
Well, that's the most important job that I have, is being a father to Georgia and Ivy and being Alex's husband. I feel like those things have always centered me. You know this very well for me, Mike, that the most important thing for me is church and family. And those things not only are prioritized because of how important they are, I would arguably say that the things I've been able to accomplish has been because of my faith and the support that I've had of my family. So to not prioritize them would seem to be intellectually dishonest of all things. But more importantly, I think that they just provide the context for when things don't go the way you want them to, when disappointment comes along, they keep everything in order, to keep everything in perspective.
Do you think that what comes to mind is anchor? Like, do you think that's anchored you? Because I think about people who are ambitious, who are A-type persona, who always want more. I'm wondering if they're not anchored to something. Is that success short-lived?
That's interesting. I think that the success becomes that success becomes unfocused, because now the success is for success sake as opposed to something far greater. Like the family for me is the battery in my back. They're like, I know why I'm doing this thing. Why are you grinding the way you are? Why are you ambitious? It's because it's meant to serve something that's beyond myself. Meaning, if someone asked me today, sort of, why do you do what you do? I believe that we're all put here on earth to serve God and serve each other. In fact, I would say we serve God by serving each other. So like the success that comes is all in the context of service. And I think that when you have something that anchors you to your point, beyond the spoils that come from what success gives, whether it's through accolades, through material, through monetary success, that it starts to be circuitous, in that I want more of the thing so I can get more of the thing. But without an anchor, none of it has context or meaning beyond the spoils themselves.
I love the word circuitous that you used when it comes to that. I'm thinking about constitution, which is going to lead me to culture, I think. I'm thinking about anyone who knows you knows all the things you've outlined with this. Your church is a huge part of your constitution. Your family is also a huge part of your constitution. And lyrical dynamics are a part of who you are, right? Because although you love music, even your cadence of your speech is lyrical. Your word choice is lyrical, right? Like the way you create your presentations and the way you speak, there's a performative aspect of it that's rooted in lyric and sound, right? And I think lyrics and sound doesn't have to be in this traditional format and construct of how we think about music. And so I think that's informed your constitution. I'm wondering, as we talk about culture, do you think that those who can really get culture and those who, more so, those who can't get culture, is that based on not having a constitution?
Oh, wow. That's a rich question. I think that to get culture, to understand this system of conventions and expectations that govern humanity, to get culture requires the ability to see the world beyond yourself. And to your point, very, very, very kind of you to say those words. I used to be a songwriter. I mean, I wanted to be Babyface so badly. You know this, Mike. A mix between Babyface and Pharrell is what I was going for. Didn't quite happen, but that's what I was going for. And I think that what makes a songwriter so great is their ability to observe the socially phenomenal world that we live in and be able to communicate in ways that people are able to interpret it through their cultural lenses, which requires seeing the world through the eyes of other people that are not yourself. And I think that those who are able to have, those who have constitutions, their worldview, their identity is constituted by these different aspects that together creates an alchemy that is who they are. They're more likely to see the world through an empathic lens, to see the world through the eyes of other people. And that makes culture far more tangible for them. So they can see a group of people and don't say, oh, they crazy. Instead, they go, oh, I may not agree with how they see the world, but they see the world through different meaning-making lenses. That's why for some, a cow is leather, for others, it's a deity, and for some, it's dinner. Well, which one is it?
Also, too, I think that it's interesting you picked up on Pharrell and Babyface, and I will argue, just this is my first time I've actually thought about this, sometimes what we want may not be in the form of what we want it to be in, but ultimately we do get what we want. And for you to always been Pharrell and to Babyface, you think about it, you always describe yourself as someone who puts things out into the world, and then with Whitney Kennedy, but then also too, you send people out into the world with Ross. And when you think about what Pharrell and Babyface has done, they put things out into the world that is transformative in so many ways. And then think about Pharrell, his iterations when he was with Nerd, right? But then when he was studying underneath Teddy Riley, right? And then to NERD, and then when he went solo, and then look to where he is now, transformative within the startup space, within skincare, right? And with fashion now, right? So it's like he is constantly putting things out for people to consume, and is also teaching and showing us on the way. And that's what you are doing, Dr. Collins.
I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if you remember this. This is a throwback for you, Mike. 22 years ago, we're in New York City, walking through Times Square. We bumped into a woman that for us seemed to be disheveled, seemed to be without a home, right? We put judgments on her immediately, and we bumped into her, and she said, "Are you too famous?" We were like, "Nah, we're not. God willing, we will be someday, but we're not." And she said, "You're going to get what you want. You just have to change how you do it." And that never left me. 22 years ago, never left me. And if you look at where you are right now, the seat that you're sitting in right now, seat that I'm sitting in right now, we're not doing the things that we set out to do initially, but a lot of the constitutions, things that constituted how we approached our careers in those early years, have manifested in different ways, but at its core, the same ethos. So to your point, I like to put things in the world. I used to do it in 4/4 as a musician, but now I do it through theory, through interrogation, through written prose and videos and many different modalities. I like I put people in the world too. And I think that at its core, we are who we are. And the question becomes, how does it manifest? And its manifestation, when done well, when it's congruent with how we see the world, it becomes a really powerful thing. And that goes to like your earlier question on all the things. I feel like that's what I'm experiencing right now, manifestation of the things that I hoped for, that I prayed for, but just done in a way that I never thought would ever happen. And the fact that it's manifested the way it is just terribly humbling.
It's interesting. You kind of got me a little bit when you thought about that woman, because I didn't think you remembered that, right? But I always think about that woman in Times Square, like who approached us. And so I think about that often, about us and about our journey, and about where you are. And, when I see you on the Forbes list, with the must reads, when I see you getting the awards that you've gotten, but really when I look at this book, and really how this book has just taken the nation and the world by storm. When I think about a good marketing strategy, you're the marketing expert, not me, right? But I think about a good slow burn, right? Like the more that you can increase the momentum, right? And as you talk about, the Beyonce case study, right? And you talked about, we were trying to create the fans, but she already had a fan base that existed with the Beehive, right? And so how do we tap into ones that are already loving us, right? And how then do we activate that, right? And I think that's what creates the longevity. And always what we're talking about, I mentioned the case study, is Dr. Collins has wrote a book for the culture, the power behind what we buy, what we do, and who we want to be. Dr. Collins has gone to work for all of these incredible companies, from State Farm to Google to Nike, and to others that I can't even name, that he will remind me of as we do this conversation. He is an incredible marketer. But I wanted to really, audience, set up the initial part of our conversation so you can really get to understand Marxist Constitution, because Dr. Collins, what my audience knows, but what you may not know is that I don't bring a lot of authors on to my show. I've never been big on authors. I think that authors, write books for a brand in order to get speaking engagements, to get on TV, to get radio shows, to do whatever, to become an adjunct professor. And so a lot of it is just not authentic to me. And so I don't allow many to come. So because my audience knows that, I wanted them to hear how you talk, right? And the authenticity of your work, and really, Dr. Collins, the intentionalities of your words. You've always been intentional with your word choice. And so you didn't let me down at all in the beginning. But I wanted my audience to be able to connect with you. And I know, audience, you're digging this conversation the way that I am. And for the scores, I'm trying to treat Dr. Collins as if he isn't my brother. And so I want to respect him and do an interview of him as such. And so, audience, I'm actually learning myself, which is really fantastic. And as I'm learning about you, Dr. Collins, I'm really intrigued by the Brooklyn case study because I am, based in New York. And before, honestly, audience, I didn't know that you were part of the Brooklyn campaign. And to this day, I always talk about how I enjoy going to the Brooklyn Nets game much more than I enjoy going to the Knicks game, right? And I didn't know that you had this theory to pit Brooklyn against Manhattan. Talk to me about that tension you wanted to create and why. Because clearly I am proof positive of your work. I even did a tour recently for season tickets. I'll tell them if I can't get Carbone in the back, I ain't doing it. But maybe you might have a little bit more pull, Dr. Collins. So
no, it's been a long time. I don't think I got no pull over here.
This is the heart of the book, audience. This is really the heart of Dr. Collins' work.
Yeah. So the Brooklyn Nets is an interesting one, and it's one of my favorites because it was a really hard brief. We got an assignment. I was at Translation. This is Steve Stout's advertising agency that he started with Jimmy Iovine and Jay-Z. And the brief was sort of simple, but very complex. Brett Yarmark, the CEO at the time, said to us, I want the Brooklyn Nets to be to Brooklyn what Manhattan is to what the Knicks are to Manhattan. You go, whew, that's tough, especially considering the fact that New Yorkers don't really like jersey exports. Like they don't rock with Jersey like that. Like maybe they'll do Bruce Springsteen and maybe they'll do Bon Jovi and maybe they'll do Lauryn Hill. But outside of that, not a whole bunch of love. So that's a problem. Secondly, the New Jersey Nets sucked as a team. They weren't great. No shade. They just weren't a winning team. And probably the most challenging part was that they were building an arena in the heartland of Brooklyn, Atlantic Terminal, that was going to be extremely disruptive, not only to the space, but also to the residents and the local business owners. So there were boycotts pushing against this team coming. So how do you overcome all those stuff, especially when the value propositions of the product, that is the team, isn't very compelling? So I thought, well, maybe let's just focus on the people, the Brooklynites. And what do we know about Brooklynites? They're probably the most proud borough, full stop. Like, is Brooklyn in a house? Like, that's a real thing. And these folks, they are very, very proud of who they are and very proud to not be Manhattanites. So we thought to ourselves, oh man, like maybe we can stoke Brooklyn pride such that people from Brooklyn will wear the Brooklyn Nets as a way to communicate their identity. They're not a Manhattanite, they're a Brooklynite. Awesome. Sweet. So how do we do that? Well, there's a theory by a guy named Edward Bernays. He's the second nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he's like the godfather of propaganda. And he says this, that you can unite a people by declaring an enemy of the state. And we thought, oh my goodness, there is a natural enemy to Brooklyn, and that's Manhattan. Like if you lived in Brooklyn, you had to schlep to Manhattan every day, every work day, begrudgingly. So much so that on the weekends, try to get a Brooklynite to come to Manhattan. It ain't happening. They're like, I'll see you Monday morning. So we said, oh, we got a natural thing here. So we create a campaign that pit these two factions of New York City together against each other in an effort to stoke Brooklyn pride. And the impact was just unbelievable. Before the team even played a game, merch sales for the Brooklyn Nets went from being number 28 in the league to number 4 before the team played a single game. The activation was totally local, but yet it was trending nationally on Twitter. I mean, it all goes to show that people consume not because of the external sort of functional benefits of a thing. We consume as a social, as a cultural act, right? We consume not because of what it is, but because of who we are. And our identity is the anchor to our cultural subscription. The better we understand that, the more likely we are to leverage that.
So let me throw you on the spot, Dr. Collins. Audience, I don't think he's going to be ready for this question, in full fairness to you. But I've been talking over the week about Messi coming to Miami and the impact that's going to have on Major League Soccer and MLS, right? And so when you talk about MLS wanting to expand, into larger markets, right, and to have more penetration into the U.S. sports, world,
Yeah.
How do you think somebody like kind of putting on your doctoral hat, your White and Kennedy hat, your For the Culture hat, right? Like, what do you think the impact of Messi will be on MLS, and why?
Well, I think that it's twofold. I think that Messi coming to MLS will just create so much credence, so much credibility for the American soccer institution. Awesome, right? From a global perspective, people are going to pay attention because Messi's there. It's like if LeBron James goes and plays for the Detroit Pistons, right? Like, people start watching Pistons games. Awesome. For people who are already insiders on the sport, fans of the sport, there's going to be more of a gravitational pull. They're going to get much more excited as well. Merch is going to go up for sure. A lot of people will be paying attention to Miami. The question becomes will that excitement, will it propagate into the populace to get people who are novices about soccer or football, however you describe it, will those people say, oh, there's so much energy over there, let me take a look? And we've seen it happen before with golf. Tiger Woods becoming this supernova in a sport that people weren't paying very much attention to unless you were paying attention, because of the gravitational pull of this guy's cultural impact brought people into the sport of golf. Messi could potentially do the same thing for MLS if done well.
Let me ask you a question now, because now I want to get into, can culture be taught, or is something cultural within? And I want to use Messi as an example, right? Like, those of us who are novice soccer fans like myself, right? I wouldn't say I'm a soccer expert, but I enjoy a good World Cup game. I enjoy going to a bar and watching, World Cup. I couldn't name all the players, but definitely I love a good Pele. I love a good Beckham, right? And like, I love Messi, right? And so now he's in Miami. When he comes and plays the Red Bull, I'm like, yo, I'm going to go because I like going to sporting events live, right?
Right.
But would they hire, let's say MLS, someone like me, who I think I understand culture, right? I understand strategy, right? But I am not of the soccer world, right? I am not of the soccer culture. So in this case, and I think this question can help showcase our audience, right? Like, can culture be taught or not? Should the MLS and the Miami club bring on, marketers and brand strategists who are lovers of soccer and of the soccer world? Or is cultural a transferable skill, like critical thinking, critical analysis, and solution oriented that we learned in engineering school?
Yes, perfectly said, actually. Culture can definitely be learned, but it requires tremendous intimacy. Right. And which is actually kind of paradoxical for where we are today. I mean, we have more data than ever before, reams and reams and reams of data, but our ability to extract insights from said data has only grown marginally. That's because we mistake information for intimacy. So if we want to understand, to learn culture, it requires proximity. Now, the challenge with that is that if you hire, say, a marketing firm to come help Miami communicate this massive thing that they've done, bringing Messi to Miami, is that those people who are insiders need to be able to translate what's on the inside to people who are on the outside. And we call those people bridges. They're able to bridge these different networks together. And oftentimes you need people who speak the language of both to do that. That's why I refer to myself as a cultural translator. I translate culture for brands and brands for culture so that they're able to realize that they see the world similarly. And it's those people who either sit in both worlds or who are not of the world, they try to find the things that are interesting, that are hooks to get other people to join in. For instance, there are more people who watch Game of Thrones than there are people who self-identified as sci-fi fans. Why is that? Because people who aren't sci-fi fans were like, yo, this Game of Thrones thing is like that, fam. Mm-hmm. And even if I go, hey, Mike, you got to watch this thing called Game of Thrones, it's crazy. You go, I'm not into dragons. I go, yo, let me tell you why you like it. Got nothing to do with dragons. It's really this. Mm-hmm. And it's the fact that someone like me, who's not a quote unquote sci-fi guy, can find something in it that makes it much more attractive to you. And that's how culture moves forward, on the basis of one simple question. Do people like me do something like this? The answer is yes, I do it. The answer is no, I don't. Make that decision hundreds, if not thousands of times a day. And therefore, to get to your point, your question, therefore, if we are to reverberate the propagation of culture to people who are not indoctrined or not a part of these communities, you need someone to translate the things that are compelling about the sport, about this moment in time for the sport, to people who are indifferent, such that they go, oh man, it is kind of cool. Let me go check this thing out.
I'm gonna use myself an example in that one about your description of Game of Thrones, which I thought was brilliant. And I love Game of Thrones. And that's so true about, I'm not into dragons, but let me tell you why you would like this and how dragons can be a metaphor, right? Golf. Dr. Collins, you'll be surprised I actually like golf now, right? I know that part, audience. You should, when you watch this back on YouTube, Dr. Collins is falling out because it's not even who I am.
I don't even know you anymore. Who are you, man?
I'm so brand new. But Dr. Collins, I mean, audience, I'm going to help illuminate what Dr. Collins is saying, why he's so on brand with this. Dr. Collins talked to me about golf from a place of, it's great for networking. But, you and I were already good with networking. We were already great with communication. Like, you and I have had a really great professional career, right? Without having to learn how to network, right? This is something I thought was very innate. And so I always backed away from golf. I'm like, I don't need to be on a golf course with 18 holes in order to get this person to want to engage with me on something, right? So I was always thrown off from it. But literally one time someone said, no, Mike, like, golf is about competing with yourself. Golf, for those who are not Tiger Woods, is a game you cannot master, right? And so you're constantly trying to master golf. You're constantly trying to improve your stroke. You can have a great stroke one day and have an awful stroke the next day, right? And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I went to the driving range for lessons, and it was difficult to try and get it. And then the next day I went back for my second lessons. I was hitting it down the middle all the way to the back of the net. Then the third day I went down to college, I could barely get the ball off the tee. And when I tell you, there was a moment where I've never wanted to quit anything in my life, literally, right? But in that moment, in the middle with me and my coach, I was like, I think I was wanting to cut this lesson short, and this ain't for me. And literally in that moment, I began to start hitting the ball a little bit straighter, and it went for the net. And I had this eureka moment, like, oh my God, they're right. Golf is something you against yourself, and you're constantly trying to perfect, right? And so that appeals to somebody like me, right? And so that's why I think that example you use about Game of Thrones and Dragon is so spot on, because that's what it was for me with golf.
I don't know if you'll convince me with golf, but it's been the best argument for golf ever made to me.
But listen, I got to figure out a way to get to speak to you, because I don't think that's not you, right? I got to find a way to get you to talk about it. I would say this: the sound of hitting the ball, there's nothing like it, right? So from a lyrical perspective, right? Like from a music.
But that's the awesome part, though.
Nothing like the click of it.
That's the awesome part about culture, is that people are the most influential marketing force there is. People trust people more than television, print, out-of-home radio. In fact, we trust strangers more than we trust marketers. Like, we trust Amazon reviews, Sexy Lover 24 from Denver. We trust him more than the actual brand we're going to consume from. Why? Because people rely on people, and people do a better job of segmenting information for people than marketers ever would. Like, you may say, Mark's ain't gonna never like that. I don't even try to convince him. He ain't gonna never like that. But I can get him to try this because of X, Y, and Z. It's that level of intimacy that we have. And those who have it are able to communicate in really compelling ways.
I already know how I'm gonna get you. It's gonna be with a golf cart, and we go to the snack area where we can get like just unlimited snacks and we can listen to music. That would be fun. Marcus, I can keep you all day. But for those of us who don't want to have a career in advertising or in marketing, for those of us who are not trying to market anything for Beyonce or for the Brooklyn Nets, right, or for Google, my audience, I always want my audience to have a takeaway, right? And my audience is all those people, but then also to teachers, educators, hospital workers, right? Like pastors, just civically engaged individuals. Like, why? Because everything that we're just talking about right now in your book, For the Culture, the Power Behind What We Buy, What We Do, and Who We Want to Be, how can this help them in their day-to-day?
I wrote this book because it's not a marketing book, it's a people book. And the argument that the book makes is that there's no external force more influential to human behavior than culture, full stop. The challenge, however, is that we don't really know what culture is. You ask 5 people to define culture, you get 35 different answers, and that's problematic. So the idea is to provide perspective and nomenclature, a Rosetta Stone by which we could talk about culture and leverage its influence. Whether you're a marketer, a leader, a manager, an activist, a politician, a teacher, even a regular Joe Schmo like me, like we are all in the business of getting people to adopt behavior, all of us. And so if you have invested interest in getting people to move, culture is your biggest cheat code, but we have to understand what it is and how to harness its power so that people adopt behavior as we design.
You see why he is Dr. Collins, folks, and you see why he wrote this book, and you see how he just impacted your life just like that, right? And what I love is that this conversation we've had all the way up to that really is the essence of what this book is about. So I definitely know that you've enjoyed the conversation because I have. And so if that is the case, you will enjoy this book. Dr. Collins, how can people get this book?
You can find it where all books are sold, from the Amazons of the world to Barnes and Nobles to Target to your local mom and pop. You can find it everywhere.
I love that. Dr. Collins, you got to come back on the Mike Muse Show again, man. We definitely have more time, and just come back anytime, man. Love you, brother.
Love you tons, man. Thanks so much.
All right, stay right there. Audience, what a show we have had today. Please enjoy yourself, whatever you choose to do for the rest of the day. Until next time, folks. Peace.